Phoenix Force. Martin's eyes flashed. It is impossible to say that he has no idea about Phoenix Force. The upper limit of Phoenix Force is too high. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is almighty universe level. The current Qin is only in the Dark Phoenix stage. Generally speaking, the strength is not strong, and the strength changes from level sub-godfather to level godfather. When she gets more phoenix fragments, she will evolve into a white phoenix. Martin left the base directly and hurried to New York. Alkali Lake, another secret research team of the military, built a base here. Jin, control yourself and don't be deceived by her. Logan was the closest to the Qin that suddenly lost control, and he was directly under the most terrifying attack. The Phoenix Force that can annihilate the atom burst out of the Qin, turning everything around him into dust. Kurt, who was far away, noticed that something was wrong. His face changed drastically, and turned around, but he was too fragile to withstand the power of the piano at all. Only a scream came and the whole person was killed by Phoenix Force. Even the corpse could not be left behind, as if it had evaporated in place. Logan growled and endured the pain. The self-healing in his body was crazy self-healing because of his 25 sons, constantly repairing the parts of his body that had been erased by the piano. But this can only guarantee that he will not die. Why is it suddenly out of control at this time? Logan's face was sullen, his face grim. Professor X has been captured by Colonel Stryker. They and Magneto are planning to rescue Professor X unexpectedly. Qin suddenly runs away at this moment. Another side. Under the leadership of Magneto, Brotherhood plunged into Alkali Lake from another direction, killing people at sight with bloody methods. But Magneto's face changed suddenly and he saw with his own eyes that a large amount of material around him was continuously dissipating. He immediately knew what had happened. Only the Qin could give out this shuddering power. Charles, if you listened to me back then and chose to channel rather than seal, Qin would not develop the terrible Dark Phoenix personality. Magneto screamed and manipulated a large amount of metal at will, and the members of Brotherhood began to move quickly. Some people have been affected and died on the spot. Colonel Stryker, who saw this scene through the ubiquitous monitor, finally couldn't help but smile, with an unforgettable expression of hatred on his face. Even if the entire underwater base dissipated in large numbers and gradually collapsed, Colonel Stryker could see countless mutants dying, and he still felt happy. Did you see, Charles, your most proud student is ruining your efforts? Unfortunately, I didn't know that Dr. Qin actually has such a powerful force. Omega Mutant? If I had known this, I would not choose to capture you alive. Stryker let out a terrible laugh. He let Mutant's son, Master of Illusion Jason, control the teleportable Blue Devil to assassinate the president, and then used this as an excuse to lead a team to raid Xavier's school, which cost a lot of money. With strength, coercion and temptation, Professor X was captured back. Then, Stryker told the sluggish woman who was always standing beside him, Yuriko, you go and guard the entrance. You can't let anyone in. Even if it's the woman, you have to block it. Yuriko walked out stupidly and executed Stryker's orders. Stop it, Stryker, hatred can't solve the problem. If this goes on, even you will be killed by the out-of-control Qin. Professor X reluctantly persuaded him with the last bit of reason. Stryker frantically said, I'm afraid of death? Do you think I'm afraid of death? After my son awakening killed my wife with super ability, what else can I lose? As long as I can kill you, everything is worth it. Jason, while there is still time, control Charles, and then obliterate Mutant in the world. No, Stryker, don't do this, but it was too late. Jason, known as the Master of Illusion, immediately controlled Professor X from the spiritual level, and created a large number of spiritual illusions, trapping Professor X's rational thinking. Professor X became a puppet. Charles, you will become the hero of all mankind. Stryker grinned loudly, put the brainwave amplifier on Professor X's head, and commanded, search all mutants. No, change the target first, search for Martin. Martin, a wicked terrorist, he killed too many people and caused too many disasters. Such people stay on the earth, it is more terrible than the Third World War. He dare to do something to the gods like Odin. What else does he dare not do? To say that the people who hate Martin most in the world are only their military. Martin slaughtered military soldiers unscrupulously. With the lives of tens of thousands of soldiers, the destruction of an Atlantic fleet and a detonated nuclear bomb, he established his cold image. General Ross, who was in charge of the Super Soldier Project, hated Martin. Stryker, who led the genetic research of Mutant X, also hates Martin. Now he has control of Professor X and has a brainwave amplifier, so he can kill Martin with a single blow. It should be no problem. Before killing all mutants in the world in one breath, kill Martin first. Anyway, it is only a matter of 1 or 2 seconds before and after. Die, I will be a hero of mankind. Stryker looked excited. The entire dam began to collapse. The underground base had collapsed sharply, but Stryker, who had fallen into madness, ignored it. Search Martin. Professor X said stiffly. Stryker ordered. Kill him, kill Martin. Professor X's powerful mental power broke out at the moment, and he did not hesitate to permanently damage himself, but also rushed out through the brainwave amplifier. The madness on Stryker's face was magnified to the extreme. Finally, waiting for this day. Finally, it's time to clean up all the filth. The whole world will be grateful to him and will always record his name Stryker at the top of the monument. Everything seems to have gone through hardships and dangers, but it will soon succeed. Charles's psychic power. Martin just stepped into the dam, walking in the collapse and darkness, the 2 gems on his right hand gleaming. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows. Charles is still under control, what a pity. Martin shook his head with a strange face, feeling the surging mental power. This kind of scene seemed familiar. When he was at the seaside, Professor X also planned to control Martin and his army, but unfortunately he was horrified by the fire. The brain hemorrhage that gathers to shock. Now here again. The light of Mind Gem lit up, and with a light flash, it instantly defeated Professor X's mental power. Stryker looked at Professor X, who was bleeding, with a shocked look on his face, and his heart beat, vaguely aware that he seemed to be missing something. Charles, did you kill that guy? Tell me the situation, damn it. Stryker roared anxiously. But Professor X has passed out in a coma. When Stryker looked terrified, hiss, a blue vortex opened. You just said, who to kill? Martin walked out slowly, and the blue light of the space gem slowly subsided. At this moment, Martin is surrounded by terrifying laws, and while his body is moving, the radiant brilliance flashes, as if it is the absolute center of the universe. All existence should bow in front of him. At least, the breath of Martin's whole body is with this powerful determination and courage. That one is handsome and angular, with a sharp sharpness, and a powerful burst of confidence. In front of Martin like this, Stryker, who was shaken by the terrible shockwave, seemed to be a jumper joker. Martin glanced indifferently, and went straight past Stryker, a genius but idiot who also knew nothing about power, and fell on the Master of Illusion beside Professor X. Level 4, Mutant of the Spirit Department, this terrible guy who can suppress Professor X on the spiritual level and turn Professor X into a puppet. On Earth, you are also special. Martin watched with interest. Stryker's mouth was bleeding, and the internal organs in his body began to collapse spontaneously in front of Martin. He was just a smart ordinary person. He looked directly at Martin, who was like a god, and Martin only needed to move his thoughts to make Stryker's the body function collapsed little by little. You don't need to use any extraordinary power, just use your thoughts. You can interfere with the outside world with will, and kill Stryker little by little. Martin steps towards the Master of Illusion. The visionary master sat in the wheelchair and watched Stryker dying. His stiff and numb eyes turned slightly, and finally there was a wave of fluctuations. A mental ability was transmitted into Martin's mind. Be my slave. The illusion master stared directly at Martin. In an instant, countless illusions were generated, layered on top of one another, entwining Martin's will one after another. It's interesting, you dare to use illusions against me. Martin looked at the suddenly changing scene before his eyes and smiled. Raising his hand to sweep away, a layer of illusion was blasted, and then there were more illusions. Sometimes, even Martin stood in front of the illusion master again, but it was still an illusion. True and false are endless. It is difficult to distinguish between reality and falsehood, and it is difficult to interpret how many layers of illusions are still ahead. However, it was still useless for Martin. He looked at the layers of illusion with admiration and smiled. Mind gem lights up. Layers of illusions were breached, ruined and decayed, strolling in the courtyard. Puff. The real illusion master immediately spit out a mouthful of blood, and his eyes, nose and mouth began to bleed continuously. His spirit was gradually collapsing, but the only trace of will that remained was still staring at Martin, his stiff and numb pupils, full of hatred. Martin walked over step by step, smiling, admiring, reaching out his right hand, grabbing the opponent's neck, and lifting it from the wheelchair. No, let go of my son. Striker's eyes immediately turned red, and with the last bit of effort, he rushed towards Martin. Snapped. With a random wave of his hand, Martin knocked Striker out and hit the wall with a light bang, which turned into mud, leaving a human-like bloodstain on the wall. The master of illusion became more and more crazy. Martin, let go of this kid, he is innocent, he was just brainwashed by Striker. Professor X finally woke up and saw the scene in front of him. He knew what was happening immediately with his wisdom. At the moment looked anxious and hurriedly stopped. I see, Professor. Click it. Martin agreed, and then slightly hardened his right hand, and with a crisp sound, he crushed the opponent's neck and threw the corpse to the ground. You're welcome. Martin behaves gracefully, as if he has been trained in rigorous etiquette since he was a child. Even killing individuals reveals a kind of leisure. At the moment, he looked at Professor X, who had returned to normal, with a smile on his face. Professor X sighed heavily and turned his head. Jin has lost control. I can feel her terrible state, hatred, murderous intent, destruction. This is the Dark Phoenix personality in her body. She cannot be allowed to continue like this, otherwise the entire Earth will collapse. Professor X quickly adjusted his mind and looked at Martin with a calm expression. Martin faintly said, No, neither I nor Ancient One will let such a small piece of Phoenix get out of control, let alone let it destroy the Earth. To put it bluntly, if Dark Phoenix were to destroy the Earth, it would be too worthy of such a small Phoenix Force. Phoenix Force is indeed powerful, and the upper limit is suspected to be almighty universe level, but Phoenix Force originally turned into countless fragments walking in a multi-universe. Just a small piece of Dark Phoenix, it wanted to destroy the Earth. Is this looking down on Ancient One, or looking down on him, Martin? Replaced with the Scarlet Witch, which can obtain another, Chaos Force, of the 3 multi-universe powers from the snake-body Sithorn, it will almost destroy the Earth. If he meets Scarlet Witch, who is in a violent state, Martin doesn't even dare to let go of a fart. He turns around and flees. The Scarlet Witch, which runs rampantly, can restart the entire multi-universe with a chaos wave. Without the multi-level universe, whoever encounters it will die. Charles, the excitement of this world is beyond your imagination. Don't limit your vision too narrowly. A smile appeared on Martin's face, full of confidence. Whoosh! At this time, the door opened, and a cold light flashed. Yuriko rushed in from outside, her nails grew longer, and she grabbed Martin with a twisted face. Don't kill her. Professor X's face changed and he had to use his spiritual ability to control Yuriko. Beta adamantium alloy. This woman is mine. But Martin's eyes brightened, and he flashed directly behind Yuriko, hitting the opponent's neck with one blow, and at the same time, Mind Gem was activated to forcibly enslave the opponent. This woman, also Striker's proud work, can be called Wolverine's second, also has a powerful self-healing factor, also injected with real adamantium alloy, and finally combined with self-healing factor, turned into a beta version of adamantium alloy. It not only has the hardness of real adamantium alloy, but also has self-healing ability. Martin hugged Yuriko directly and looked at each other as if, well done, admiring the artwork, very satisfied. Professor X opened his mouth, and finally didn't say anything, just sighed deeply. Boom. The main structure of the entire dam has been annihilated by the violent Qin, and it began to collapse in the middle of noon. Wow. The terrible sound of running water is produced. Charles. With a roar, Magneto pierced through the wall and rushed in. Seeing that Professor X had returned to normal, a trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes. He was also thinking that he could control Professor X and kill the ordinary people all over the world in one go. It's been a long time, Martin, you have become an amazing person. Magneto quickly said, but it's not the time to relive the old days. Jin is walking here and doesn't want to stop him. Except Martin, everyone else will die. Here comes the piano. With the monstrous anger and hatred that has been sealed for decades, he directly crossed the long distance and came to the deepest part of the dam. Even if there is a large amount of flooding, it can be directly annihilated by the terrible energy field and dissipate spontaneously at a place 10 meters away from the piano. This is an extremely terrifying scene. Charles, I'm here to avenge you. There was an accent in the Chin's voice, his eyes were already pitch black, and his long dark red hair was fluttering bitterly. Magneto looked at Chin, his face changed immediately, and whispered, damn it. The power of the opponent is really terrifying, and the terrifying energy field that can annihilate everything is almost a realm. Magneto let out a low growl, forcibly manipulated the magnetic field, using the power of magnetic control, but Chin only saw it at a glance and instantly crushed Magneto's magnetic field. Level 4 mutant, facing the god like Omega mutant, the gap is not so big. Chin, come back, you are the piano, my student, not a phoenix. Fight bravely, don't be afraid, you can do it. Professor X intends to break through the spiritual barrier and enter directly into Chin's heart to talk to the master. But Chin immediately let out a stern laugh. You sealed me for so long, until now, you still think that you were right? You didn't ask for my opinion, you didn't ask for Chin's opinion, you dare to seal the noble me still think you did not do anything wrong? Chin's voice carries a bitter hatred. Her current Dark Phoenix personality is not so much a Chin, but actually possesses Chin's emotions, memories, thinking and values, Phoenix Force. She is still the will of Phoenix Force in essence, not the piano. Jin raised his hand, and a terrible wave broke out, with a terrible power to erase everything, and rushed towards Professor X. Now she only sees Professor X, this old thing, she hates it. As for Martin, she completely ignored it. It's really troublesome, Charles, the bitter fruit that you planted yourself should have been picked up by yourself. Martin shrugged, his heart moved, and the yellow light flickered, creating an indestructible mental area, and powerfully cut off the attack of the piano. Mind gem. Chin frowned, moving his eyes indifferently. As a Phoenix Force, I didn't, CFBD, know how many universes I traveled through before I came to this universe, and stored countless pieces of information. I definitely recognized this force at a glance. Infinite gems are also very common powers all over the multi-universe. That old lady of the Nemesis, I never stopped sleeping. Chin's eyes were a little cold, and every time she saw infinite gems, she felt irritable and disgusted from the bottom of her heart. All infinite gems are nothing but the remnants of Nemesis's power, and can be replicated as the multi-universe continues to replicate itself. Go away. Even if you have infinite gems, don't try to stop me. Chin's eyes moved, black permeated, and more powerful fluctuations erupted, and they attacked Martin in a sudden, but every time the mind gem flashed, Chin's attack could be blocked. I am very interested in you, Phoenix. Instead of following the piano, follow me. I can take you through the multi-universe. Martin waved his hand, the space gem lit up, and immediately a whirlpool was created, swallowing everyone else in. When the surging lake water rushed wildly, only Martin and Chin were left here. Your smile makes me feel sick, no one is qualified to order me. Chin was irritated by Martin's arrogant attitude. In the roar, more and more terrible light surged. In the crazy roar, there was even a phantom of a phoenix that appeared behind Chin. This phantom is so powerful, and it has the ability that affects all life and emotions. At this moment, countless people see the shadow of a burning phoenix in their minds. Phoenix Force is essentially the co-incarnation of countless life emotions in multi-universe. Gorgeous. Martin sighed and looked at the dazzling phantom with appreciative eyes. His eyes were extremely bright. This wonderful power, he is about to fix it. As for the piano, deprived of Phoenix Force by him, he no longer has to worry about losing control. Martin walked out slowly, determined to do it. He wants to take Phoenix Force in one fell swoop. Violent fluctuations erupted. Martin shot one after another, and in a crash, the mind gem flashed again and again. There was a large amount of indescribable powerful and pure spiritual power, which burst out from the mind gem continuously, and rushed towards the piano. Hiss. Chin turned his head slightly, glanced at it, and instantly tore apart a wave of mind gem. The phantom of the phoenix behind him, at the moment, it's like spreading its wings and soaring, waving its wings, flashing one after another, making it more powerful. Phoenix Force came out of the piano. Two psychic forces that can be called the top of the universe clash, and a terrible spiritual storm has erupted. A large amount of lake water was cut by terrible spiritual power, making a terrible roar. This out-of-control lake that was terrible enough to cause a disaster, in front of these two people, was as fragile as a baby. In the successive collapse and reorganization, fundamentally it's a plaything. Whenever someone is involved in such a fierce psychic confrontation, in just a single moment, the entire complete will be torn into countless fragments. In the battle of mind, as long as one party loses, the end is often more terrible than death. This almost extreme spiritual storm, every thread of interweaving, is mixed with terrible powers that can cause the mental breakdown of hundreds of millions of people. Be a part of me obediently, Phoenix. What good is it to occupy the body of Chin? In Martin's eyes, the mind gem flashed one after another, strongly constructing an indestructible spiritual blade. He personally walked directly to the piano step by step, and the distance he stepped on was not bad at all, as if he had been carefully measured. This kind of calmness angered Phoenix even more. You will die. I can't kill you now. Sooner or later, more phoenixes will find you and kill you completely. Mind gem can't protect you forever. Jin watched walking towards her step by step, and finally stood firmly in front of her. Even if she was bathed in a terrible spiritual storm, she still had a smile on her face, and when there was an extreme desire to conquer in this smile, she couldn't help but roar. Martin gently said, "You made a mistake. I can get to this point. I have never relied on any mind gem. I have my own strength." For the last time, he used the powerful power of mind gem to directly defeat the opponent, and then pressed it on Chin's chest. "Now, you belong to me." Martin leaned over, whispered in the earlobe of the opponent, and then, with a sudden grasp, he directly crossed the shackles of his body, held down the Phoenix Force, and tear fiercely. At the center of this psychic storm, the Phoenix fragment in the piano body was abruptly pulled out by Martin. The golden flame was burning, and the formed phoenix shape suddenly erupted. At the moment, with a sharp roar, the power of the soul continuously blasted towards Martin. "It's useless, in front of me, you are no different from an ordinary bird." Martin clings to Phoenix Force tightly, his face is cold, and he feels the rage from the other person, with a cold smile on his mouth. Seriously, he didn't care about Chin at all, he was willing to come here because he cared about Phoenix. After losing the Phoenix Force's piano, he passed out in a coma on the spot, and was moved away by a spatial vortex thrown out by Martin. "You dare to offend me so much, I am a phoenix. The supreme multi-universe, even the 5 great creation gods, dare not treat me like this." Phoenix Force kept struggling, and raging anger burst into those burning eyes. "Correct. The 5 of them just don't dare to treat the complete you like this, and now you. How much of your complete body? 10,000? Or 100 million? Martin shook his head slightly. The right hand was pressed hard and squeezed hard. The entire Phoenix was captured by Martin's brutality, and began to show signs of collapse. Its breath suddenly stagnated, and even the golden flames immediately became dimmed. Then, Martin just pinched the Phoenix like this, as if he would choke the other person here at any time. His eyes were very bright as his arms moved, and then he pressed directly into his body. The Phoenix fragment melted directly into Martin's body. Boom! The violent energy particles vibrated wildly, and centered on Martin, spread out unscrupulously. The huge alkali lake evaporates instantly under this huge force, and is directly wiped from the earth. Only after a long time will it be possible to accumulate into a big lake again. The terrifying golden phantom, as soon as it merged into Martin's body, it soared into the sky, and rushed to an altitude of 10,000 meters in a flash. This terrible power was instantly noticed by some powerful guys, and their faces were extremely solemn as they looked up one after another. Phoenix Force? That guy, he still attacked Phoenix. I don't know if it is a blessing or a curse. Ancient One looked back for a while, then shook his head. In front of her, Stephen was practicing portal spells with an ugly face, but failed again and again, until he saw the edge of the sky turned into a golden yellow, and immediately stopped, with a look of consternation. What is that? Phoenix Force, the top power in the universe. There are many people who want to get this power, but most of them die miserably, Ancient One said lightly. But this time, it was Martin who started Phoenix Force, the man who is good at creating miracles, after all. The terrible roar continued. After being swallowed by Martin, the phoenix was struggling frantically, and there was more brutality and joy that it had never experienced before. You are looking for death. You can control the mind gem, but you can never guarantee that your mind is free of flaws. The voice of Phoenix Force sounded in Martin's mind, with a joy. It seemed that he had found a chance to retaliate against Martin. Martin smiled. Then you can try, little bird, look at me, can you perfectly possess your power? A sharp chirp sounded, and the phoenix began to quickly explore Martin's will. This was an instinctive thing for him. It was originally a gathering of emotional power, and the exploration and control of the soul could not be more familiar. But soon, it was stunned. Your mind? Why is it so tough that I can't break it open? Phoenix's voice was filled with deep confusion. In the perception of the phoenix, Martin's mind, even the smallest and most overlooked corner, has an indestructible and terrible tenacity. If the water drips tightly and does not leak, it will be forgotten. What's worse, it found that Martin originally, his mind is actually extremely vast. This is impossible in principle. There is no psychic flaw, no psychic loophole, no softness, and a terrifying psychic ocean from nowhere. Even if you are a god, as long as you have the will, there will be strong and weak places in your mind, but your mind, why does every place have the same strength? Phoenix was really shocked, as if he had seen a wonder that was difficult to see in all multi-universes. Although some of the weakest spiritual defects of the top gods cannot be broken by the current ones, at least they know that there are strengths and weaknesses, but now this guy. Why? Find Flowers Phoenix does not believe in evil, and the Phoenix Force bursts out. It directly soars its own strength to the extreme, stubbornly attacking Martin's mind, trying to find a place that is considered weak. As long as it is a living thing, there must be relative weakness. But there must be a reason for the weirdness of this earthling. It constantly shuttled in the spiritual world, hitting the wall again and again, becoming weaker and weaker, and once again bypassing the wall of the soul. It was completely stunned by the scene in front of it. Ahead, in the depths of the maze of mind, there is a mysterious black cube standing quietly. Unspeakable life and spiritual power, like the vast Wang Yang, are constantly pouring out, closely connected with Martin's body and soul. In other words, the two of them are one. What is this? Phoenix could hardly believe the scene he saw before him. It was considered to have traveled through many universes, had seen some open life forms, and had observed many strange and incomprehensible phenomena, but the black cube in front of him was unheard of. This is the source of fire, you can understand it as my heart. Martin's calm voice suddenly came in, resounding around the phoenix. A strong sense of crisis emerged in Phoenix's heart, and a fierce spiritual storm blasted toward the cube in front of him, but it was blowing up like a breeze, meaningless. Next moment, there were terrible fluctuations in the source of the fire immediately, and this was still a part of the power. The tip of the iceberg that was exposed, when it surged, caused the phoenix to have a strong anxiety. Boom! The source of the fire shook slightly, and a force that surpassed the phoenix suddenly broke out, and it was pressed in an instant. The fierce blow turned into countless chains, layered on top of each other, and cannot be circumvented or evaded, and directly drove the phoenix, locked, imprisoned in the depths of Martin's heart. Dark Phoenix, your strength is not strong enough, but it is also good enough for me. From now on, be a part of me. Martin looked at the phoenix locked deep in his heart with a faint smile. Why? Why is it like this? The angry screams of the phoenix sounded in the depths of Martin's heart. It was suppressed in the depths of Martin's soul. Martin's power was suppressed by Martin and can be used at will. Martin's constant power was extracted by Martin, and his domineering power was transformed into his own. The phoenix struggled desperately, but the countless chains would only lock it tighter, and from the source of fire, there were more chains, almost infinite, and with a size that was simply unmatched. And rule, deadlock it, and can't move it. I just got rid of Charles's shackles, got rid of the shackles of Chin's body, but I was trapped in the spiritual world again. Moreover, the power of imprisonment it suffered this time far exceeded the limit it had come into contact with and understood. Especially feeling that Martin is wantonly grabbing and using its power, I can't help but become even more angry. Give up, bird, you can't escape. At this time, an unfamiliar voice sounded. Who? Phoenix looked warily, and then was taken aback. It saw a ball of flames, the eternal fire. In other words, it is Serta's will, soul, and power. The eternal fire is also imprisoned here, but the difference is that the eternal fire is not bound by a chain, but is directly controlled by the fire source. Obviously, it is also enslaved, but the state is much better. I have tried countless times. The size of this black cube is beyond imagination and it is impossible to escape. The eternal fire jumped, and Serta's voice came out. It's better to give up struggling and be more comfortable. Are you planning to be trapped here in the future? Phoenix was unwilling. The eternal fire paused and said, Oh, don't get me wrong, my core is trapped here, but my body can move freely outside. I am different from you. Moreover, the fire source can also warm me. The eternal fire, there's nothing wrong with it. Maybe after millions of years, I will be able to break the barriers of life and become the cosmic god of the level single universe. This is a fate, and a little bit of fun. Phoenix was very angry and continued to struggle. This little phoenix is really irritable. Martin was dumb, and directly blocked the cry deep in his heart. Seriously, no matter how the phoenix jumps, there is no possibility of breaking free. The Dark Phoenix, between the mere level sub-godfather and the level godfather, would be unreasonable if Martin let the bird run away. However, the blessing that Phoenix Force brings to a living body is really amazing. Martin stretched out a hand, and from the palm of his palm, there was a sudden ripple of golden energy, which was similar to Mind Gem but was essentially different. It is the primitive power that directly refers to the essence of multi-universe. In the future, more Phoenix Forces will need to be collected. If possible, it would be better to get all Phoenix Forces in your hands. Martin clenched his fist, raised his hand to open a space tunnel, and walked in slowly with his back on his back. In the next second, he came directly to the base of the Earth. How is the personality of Dark Phoenix? Professor X acts in a very bad state, barely cheering up. From now on, there is no such thing as the Dark Phoenix personality. The power of Phoenix Force is my own. Martin looked at these mutants of X-Men and Brotherhood, his voice calm, but with an extremely strong attitude. Chin's spirit is damaged, but the problem is not serious, and he needs to recuperate for a period of time. Professor X checked the unconscious piano again and said. Many people were relieved. Magneto looked at Martin with a touch of complexity in his eyes, opened his mouth to say something, but finally shook his head. You and me are not the same after all. I said before that your field of vision is too narrow, and you always limit your gaze to the seemingly magnificent range that is actually not worth mentioning. Martin spoke calmly. Mutant's future? If you change to Martin to lead mutant, you will definitely think of owning a planet and move all the mutants. The problem is solved. Martin's gaze turned slightly, looking at the backbone of X-Men and Brotherhood present, and finally, his gaze paused slightly, seemingly inadvertently, and stayed on the two mutants for an extra moment. No one noticed. These two mutants are Red Devil, Juggernaut. The Red Devil is no problem. This old guy who has lived for thousands of years on Earth is not strong. But in fact, this red devil is a duplication. The body is imprisoned in a different time and space. What makes Martin more concerned about is the burly Juggernaut. The source of Juggernaut's power, similar to Scarlet Witch Wanda, did not come from itself, but was transferred from the power of an ancient Mephisto. The power of Juggernaut comes from Marvel's first demon, Cetolik, master of the Crimson Universe. Also last time, when Martin attacked Hell and killed Mephisto, he was the most feared guy. Can be called Marvel's #1 demon. Cytorak's strength can be imagined, and the proper multi-level universe, in terms of status, is equivalent to the third house on the DC side. The matter is over. I will send you back to New York. You are not welcome here. Martin spoke lightly, creating a space-time vortex and sending them all back. The only thing left is Yuriko, mutant, who is nicknamed Death Lady. The beta adamantium alloy in this guy's body is what Martin needs. The ambulance immediately draws blood from this woman, researches out the self-healing metal that can be used in a wide range of applications, and then inputs the relevant data into the incubation warehouse, so that some newly born fighters can also have this kind of self-healing, healing metal body. Martin ordered, "You will not be disappointed, Lord Creator." The ambulance was a little excited, and immediately squatted down, monitored Yuriko with a large number of instruments, and then hurried away after drawing a part of the blood. In the whole hall, only Martin and Yuriko remained. Martin glanced away and couldn't help smiling at the corner of his mouth. He walked directly over, picked up Yuriko, swept away everything on the table at random, threw it aside, and put Yuriko on it with a bang. Reached out, hissed, and tore the opponent's black tights to pieces. It seems that today is another wonderful night, which makes me feel happy. A smile appeared on Martin's face, satisfied with the beauty in front of him, and he unbuttoned his formal suit with ease. A portal slowly opened, and accompanied by bright sparks, a tall and straight figure walked out of it and went directly outside the base of the earth. This person slowly raised his head, and there was a strange black substance squirming in his eye sockets, and the power of darkness was surging every moment. This is the man's territory. A weird smile appeared on Caecilius's face, and there was a condescending coldness. He walked slowly towards the base. He has already been spotted by shapeshifting King Kong. A confident smile appeared on Caecilius's face. "I am." Boom. An energy cannon directly blasted over. Caecilius's face changed, and a magical barrier was created in an instant, and the energy cannon was stopped. The blue veins violently jumped, and he opened his mouth to be annoyed, but immediately, more horrible artillery fired over. Caecilius's face became completely dark, and he gave a cold snort, his wrist shook, and a disc-shaped magic with complex patterns immediately appeared in his palm, easily stopping this amazingly lethal energy cannon 25. Soon, the shelling stopped. "I am Caecilius, on behalf of a noble god, come to meet Martin," Caecilius said with an ugly face and said coldly. If it wasn't for Martin's strong performance and worried that if he stood in front of Martin with the portal directly, he would be killed by Martin's face, Caecilius would not have a good temper at all. "Interesting, let this idiot get in." Martin's voice came out, and the base door suddenly opened. Caecilius walked into the base with a gloomy face, looking at the countless shapeshifting diamonds around and the huge buildings rising from the ground. His brows were slightly frowned, and his eyes showed fear. He didn't care about the strength of these shapeshifting King Kong. According to his understanding, the strongest one did not reach the level sub-godfather. As long as he couldn't break the star with a punch, he was sure to use all kinds of magic to kill. What he really cares about is that these robots made by Martin really have complete intelligence. Just look at these hideous buildings, all made of metal, and they are extremely complex, and there are many complexities in a large number of buildings. Weapons. This base can't be made by one person, it is clearly researched and built by these intelligent robots. This is terrible. Wait here, the creator will condescend to meet you. Shockwave said indifferently, turning around and leaving. He still has a lot of research to do. Caecilius's eyes trembled and he sneered. Another hour passed before Martin arrived late. With me, Kamar Taj's magician is never welcome. Martin just finished his bath, put on his clothes and waxed his head, and walked out calmly. He had a wonderful night. At the moment, he was extremely happy. Caecilius, who was already impatient, got up immediately, took a deep breath of the restlessness under the air pressure, and said solemnly, "Your Excellency Martin, I, Caecilius, a faithful servant of a great universe god, come for you." Martin snapped his fingers, and immediately there was a cup of coffee boiling. He poured himself a cup, sniffing the aroma of coffee, and said lightly, "Really, you surprised me. It doesn't matter if Dormammu makes a public statement. He is qualified. But his dog is so arrogant." Caecilius's eyes narrowed. "You actually know my master's name? As expected, you deserve to be the one who can fight Ancient One and never die." His eyes moved, and finally fell on Martin's infinite gems on his right hand, with a trace of greed in his eyes. Infinite gems, together with this unique glove that can exert the power of infinite gems, can be called the top treasure of the universe. To some extent, this glove is even rarer than infinite gems originally. Martin, your name has gradually resonated throughout the multi-universe. Many ancient universe gods have heard of your name. Similarly, there are more gods who plan to kill you and take everything from you. Caecilius opened his arms, showing his obsession and enthusiasm. Among them, the one who is willing to save your life is my master, the supreme existence of the infinite dark dimension Dormammu. Take refuge in my master, you will gain eternal life, have an endless lifespan, you will no longer be in fear and restlessness, and your soul will have long-lasting peace and peace. Martin tilted his head. So, I respect the order of the great Dormammu, come to solicit you, you have the qualifications to be valued by my master. Caecilius smiled confidently, even when facing the terrifying guy Martin. Just mention Dormammu, his inner fear of Martin gradually disappeared. Dormammu, living in the dark dimension, the famous super Mephisto in the universe, slaughtered the terrifying existence of countless planets. In Caecilius's opinion, Martin, although powerful, miraculously rose to power, defeated Odin, recruited Serta, killed Mephisto, and was able to confront the terrible Ancient One and shake the ancient existence in the universe. But, still not enough, in the face of the immortal Dormammu Mephisto, Martin's strength and achievements are simply not worth mentioning. Caecilius said, "You rely on infinite gems to maintain your current status and strength, and my master, relying only on his own magic power, can have a powerful strength no less than infinite gems. Otherwise, Ancient One would not be affected for so many years. My master suppressed it." Boom. Martin put the cup on the table with a weird look, looking up and down Caecilius. "First of all, I can come to this day not by infinite gems, but by the power of a system that I own. In addition, I will tell you a cruel thing, Caecilius, Domam has never regarded you as servant, he only treats you as a trivial pawn." Martin smiled. Caecilius was startled and frowned. "I am the first servant of the master of Dormammu, definitely, if you can accept the invitation of the master, I am willing to condescend to be the second, but this doesn't mean." Before he could finish his words, Martin slowly raised his head, his eyes bursting with murderous intent. "I mean, Dormammu sent you here, so he should prepare you to be killed by me." Martin sneered. Caecilius immediately played a powerful magic. As the first disciple of Ancient One, his strength was also extremely powerful. At the same time, he drew a portal and turned around and was about to shuttle away. But Martin moved faster, the blue light flashed, the portal collapsed, and Caecilius's neck was caught in his wide palm, and he lifted it up. "Killing you was just a trivial beginning, and also a declaration of war to that idiot Dormammu. Don't mess with me." Click it. In Caecilius's incredulous gaze, Martin snapped his neck directly. Until his death, Caecilius was in disbelief. He couldn't believe that he could enjoy eternal life as long as he dedicated the earth to Dormammu, and he died here. Dormammu did not save him, and the power of darkness did not respond. He was indeed abandoned by Dormammu. The dark dimension is a special world beyond ordinary three-dimensional space, boundless, and there are countless dead planets inside. Dormammu was comfortably bathed in darkness and endless magma. Those terrifying gazes comparable to the file size of the moon, occasionally opened a gap, with a terrible bloodthirsty touch. He is the Lord of Darkness, the top cosmic god in a single universe, with countless stars as food, and the wailing of billions of lives as music. The name of Dormammu, Lord of Darkness, resounded throughout the universe. Occasionally, some beings or even a certain planet are swallowed in by the dark dimension that is constantly moving. That is nothing more than normal. The great Dormammu never cared about his own territory. The unlucky ones who broke in were killed, and the servants he recruited, as well as the lower creatures scattered in the dark dimension, would spontaneously attack those stupid ones. Kill all the intruders. As long as you are in the dark dimension, the great Dormammu is invincible. That idiot Caecilius is dead. Suddenly, Dormammu gave a whisper and realized that one of his servants had lost contact. Either it was a stronger guy who forcibly erased the dark magic he arranged, which is definitely impossible. Either it was killed by someone. Who is it? Ancient One, or Martin? Dormammu narrowed his eyes, and the flames on his huge head were hot enough to burn the fixed star, and the magic of darkness lingered. It was really interesting. Dare to kill him, Dormammu's servant. Court death. In the dark dimension, countless depleted planets suddenly burst apart under the anger of the great Dark Master, turning into countless dust. You should be thankful that you are all on Earth, but whenever there is a possibility of separation, I will kill you all long ago. Dormammu snorted coldly, and the hot flames and magic expelled were enough to destroy a life planet. He has reason to be proud. He suppressed Ancient One, which has a magical weapon in his hand, and has shrunk the earth for hundreds of years. This is a great strength, and it is suppressed by his absolute strength. Although there is another human named Martin on the earth, it seems to be extremely powerful, rising strongly, and his name has gradually resonated throughout the universe, and many ancient guys have begun to pay attention to Martin. However, Dormammu still didn't take him seriously. It's just relying on infinite gems. What does this count? The same as rubbish, no different from Ancient One, both are extremely ridiculous guys. When I find time, I will kill it and pull the earth into my dark dimension to take a closer look. Dormammu re-immersed in the lava and squinted comfortably. At this time, boom! There was a loud noise. The huge dark dimension is regarded by many gods and Mephistos as the dark dimension of the Jedi. At the moment, it trembled suddenly, the gray stars collapsed, and the endless dark magic riots. A huge amounts of gap was strongly torn apart by an unknown comber, revealing a terrible hole. A large number of demons sensed the movement and screamed, and countless terrible numbers swarmed and rushed towards the intruder. The terrible light flashed, and these freaks were like rubbish, swept away, crushed by terrifying power. Those faraway demons noticed the death of their companions, and showed fear, and they dared not approach it. Who is it? Dormammu roared and got up suddenly. That terrifying infinite body, at the moment, stood upright. At the first glance, it seemed as if a universe was as huge as the endless and terrifying dark power surging around, like a roaring Wang-yang. He turned his head to look. His cruel and cold gaze finally fell on a tiny figure. A human? Dormammu laughed in a low voice. Martin slowly raised his head. After tearing open a path, he directly raised his foot and stepped into the dark dimension. His eyes were indifferent, and he glanced at random. The desolation and boringness of this dark dimension is really annoying. It was just as annoying as the guy standing in the front with bloodthirsty and jokes in his eyes. Dormammu, I'm here to negotiate terms. Martin's expression was plain. Even facing the terrifying Mephisto of the entire universe, there was no fear in those deep pupils that seemed to be able to swallow countless galaxies. Plain enough to seem to be watching carefully, pig and sheep waiting to be slaughtered. He was small, but for some reason, Dormammu always felt that he was the one being overlooked. Bad feelings, arrogant humans. Martin, what do you want to talk about? What attitude should you use to beg me for mercy? Dormammu's huge flame head suddenly spanned countless light years before reaching Martin. Martin looked up. What I want to talk about is, you kneel down and beg me, I will spare you not to die, it's fair. Dormammu was silent for a while, and suddenly let out a terrifying laugh like the collapse of the universe. The power of dark magic mixed in the sound waves caused countless substances in the dark dimension to begin to disappear. Human, your arrogance has blinded your eyes. Who do you think I am? Odin? Mephisto? Or Ancient One? Stupid. Dormammu laughed constantly, killing intent to breed. Martin opened his mouth and said, "When I kill you, you will know who is stupid." On the magnetic glove, 2 infinite gems suddenly lit up, and the terrifying power that level single universe could possess suddenly burst out, shaking this dark dimension in an instant. With a cold face, Martin stepped out, clenched his fist and slammed it at Dormammu even at a distance. Boom! There was a terrible loud noise, and this blow would be enough to crush a galaxy in the outside world. Dormammu was even hit by a punch, and the power of the 2 infinite gems hit him, making him unable to help but let out a roar of rage, his voice filled with pain. "Humble human beings, die! I will extract your soul and tortured for hundreds of millions of years." Dormammu's rage is incomparable. A series of terrible magical powers surged, and the attacks between the matter and the energy struck, turning into a solidified bondage, and suddenly entangled Martin Chi. "Good idea, Dormammu, don't let me take your soul out." A blue light flashed, and all these constraints were wiped out than Space Gem. Immediately afterwards, the blue was dim, and the yellow light surged, hitting out in a violent, straight down to Dormammu's huge body. A spiritual storm broke out, directly bombarding Dormammu's heart and spirit. Dormammu let out a roar. At this moment of the war, the entire dark dimension has been swept into it, and the shaking world of darkness was impacted by this terrifying force. Dormammu is also in rage, blessing the power of the entire dark dimension to himself. "Today, no one can save you." Martin's expression became more solemn than ever. Dormammu is the strongest enemy he has faced so far. To say how powerful Dormammu was originally, that is not necessarily, but the real headache is that he can bless the power of the entire dark dimension to himself, which is terrible, comparable to the dark dimension of a small universe. The accumulated dimensions, time and space, and energy power can be imagined, extremely terrifying. And Dormammu, as the only true god in the dark dimension, can use it at will. To break into the dark dimension to fight Dormammu is to face the sum of Dormammu and the dark dimension at the same time. It's no wonder that Ancient One is so strong, and with so many artifacts in hand, it still can't kill Dormammu. Martin blasted out with a blow and confronted the black magic from Dormammu, causing a terrible disaster of galaxy annihilation. If you want to kill Dormammu, you have to run into the dark dimension and destroy Dormammu and the entire dark dimension. This is an extremely difficult task. Even if Ancient One has Time Gem in hand, it is still useless, and the passage of time in the dark dimension is invalid. Infinite gems fell into your hands. It's really a waste. Dormammu's eyes turned, and terrible magic tricks came, with a turbulent posture and madness, and they continued to blast towards Martin. He finally stared at the 2 infinite gems on Martin's gloves, with both jealousy and strong greed in his eyes. This is infinite gems. Although Dormammu dismissed Martin and did not fear the power of infinite gems at all, it did not mean that he had no idea about infinite gems. Moreover, there are 2 infinite gems in one breath. In this universe, no one has ever been able to get 2 infinite gems at the same time. I didn't expect you, a humble human being, to do it, but it doesn't matter, because your infinite gems will soon become my thing. Dormammu let out a terrible laugh, and at the same time there was a deep sense of fear in his heart. Martin's understanding and use of infinite gems is far beyond his imagination. It doesn't matter if he can use the power of 2 infinite gems at the same time, but he can actually maximize the power of infinite gems? Even some gods cannot do this, but Martin, a human, did it. A more violent vibration erupted, and the entire dark dimension began to be unbearable in the gradually expanding fierce battle, resulting in a terrifying crack. Although it recovered quickly, it did have a crack. This is a terrible sign. Dormammu already felt the pressure. As Martin uses infinite gems more frequently, Dormammu becomes more and more passive. My heart is more irritable. Dormammu, you will die in my hands, and I will use your corpse to cushion my rising throne. Boom. Martin stepped on his foot and crushed a sudden hitting meteorite. The countless rubble suddenly turned into a meteor and fell straight into the depths of the dark dimension. If you talk to me like this with the power gem, there is still a slight possibility, but space and mind. He he he. Dormammu gave a weird sneer. Space? Soul? These two infinite gems have a stronger influence on him than Time Gem, and they are far from the power, reality, and the most mysterious soul that hurt him more. Although his dark dimension is somewhat unbearable, it is also faint. As long as Dormammu wants to, he can use his endless power to delay the battle with Martin, a humble human being, until the destruction of the universe. So troublesome. Martin frowned slightly and looked up, looking at the vast magic that flooded the sky and the dead stars that were originally constantly mobilized by the dark dimension. He raised his right hand and the space gem's power was activated. In an instant, the blue vortex suddenly appeared. The endless vortex accurately swallowed every attack, and immediately the vortex itself dissipated, already transmitting Dormammu's terrible attack directly to Dormammu's body. CFBD. Rumble. Hiss. In the dark dimension, a huge amounts of gap broke out again. The aftermath of this fierce battle spread a little to the outside world. In an instant, countless planets were destroyed. Numerous explosions occurred. What a strong breath. Who is fighting Dormammu in the dark dimension? Which ancient cosmic god is it? Dormammu was originally okay. The real trouble is the entire dark dimension. If Dormammu leaves the dark dimension, it won't be difficult to kill him. Looking at it one after another, revealing solemnity. Actually, someone went to the dark dimension to attack Dormammu. What kind of behavior is this? Not a fool, but he is extremely confident of his own strength. Boom boom boom. More frequent battles have occurred, and aftermaths have spread to the outside world, causing countless planets to be poured with blood mold, and explosions on the spot are normal. No one cares about this anymore. They are more concerned about winning or losing in the end. If Dormammu is really killed, it would be a good thing to remove the malignant tumor for this universe. Gradually, the faces of the ancient gods became weird, and they realized the power of infinite gems. It's Martin again? Why is it always him? They looked far away. Dip. Congratulations to the host's reputation resounding throughout the universe, and the level universe prestige draw. Dip. Congratulations to the host for drawing the Cybertron relic time still gun. A peculiarly shaped gun appeared in the inventory. Martin raised his eyebrows while fighting with Dormammu. The weapon of stagnation time, shot out with one shot, directly locks the time in a certain area. This kind of sacred object is a top weapon no matter where it is placed. As long as the strength does not reach the multi-level universe, the interference of time cannot be avoided. To deal with Dormammu, time is the most useless thing. Martin was a little bit dumbfounded. Giving him a sacred object such as a lock scepter and phase shifter is definitely more useful than a time-still gun and can be used directly against Dormammu. But if you think about it, it's not without a chance. Martin raised his head and once again tore apart the power of darkness that had enveloped everything. Mind Gem was launched, and he rushed out frantically, constantly distorting Dormammu's will. Although he could not directly control the opponent, he could at least form huge amounts of it. Interference. The space gem flickered. The entire dark dimension once again had terrible cracks. Dormammu, you said, what if I bypass you and destroy the dark dimension first? Martin sneered at the corner of his mouth. Can Dormammu at that time still block the passage of time? Without the dark dimension, Martin is sure to kill Dormammu even without infinite gems. Dormammu's fate. He's about to fix it. A trace of decisiveness and cruelty appeared in Martin's eyes, his right hand held high, and the blue light flashed, directly bypassing Dormammu, and began to tear the dark dimension in a large area. As long as there is no dark dimension, he is sure to kill Dormammu directly. What are you doing? Dormammu roared, the lava was tumbling, a large amount of dark magic came surging, the vacuum roared, and the darkness was restless. Dormammu, meet old friends. Martin sneered, and in a crash, a space-time vortex appeared beside him, and a figure shuttled in from the space vortex. A large yellow robe, all hoods off, revealing a bald head. Ancient One. The two of you actually joined forces? Dormammu let out an angry roar, even more shocked. These two guys had a bloody battle not long ago, and they mobilized the power of 3 infinite gems, which caused a shock in the universe, but now, they are actually joining hands to get him? Dormammu's face was gloomy. You guys. It's been a long time, Dormammu. I dream of waiting for this day. Waiting for the chance to eradicate you. Ancient One smiled faintly. On her forehead and eye sockets, a large strange black pattern slowly grew. As the power of darkness on her body appeared, part of the power of darkness in this dark dimension was slowly absorbed by Ancient One, and the magic power surging in her body was slowly becoming stronger. It was still so peaceful, with a smile on the corner of his mouth, as if there was no temper, and the breath on his body was as quiet as before the storm. At the chest, Eye of Agamotto slowly opened, and the power of Time Gem emerged. It complements Space Gem and Mind Gem. 3 infinite gems gathered, just for today, to completely kill Dormammu here and eradicate future troubles. In an instant, Dormammu understood immediately. You are still here, you despicable and hypocritical supreme magician. Dormammu laughed wildly, and his ferocious gaze fell on Ancient One. For so many years, you have been stealing the power of darkness that belongs to me, and now you are bringing me to the other side? Dormammu sank suddenly, and his huge body produced a suffocating pressure. He stared at Ancient One, feeling the aura of determination emerging from the other's small body. Ancient One, you have today's power because you are parasitic on me. Now you have to pay for it with your life, whether it is you or Martin. The combination of 2 reptiles will never defeat me, great Dormammu. Dormammu had even more terrifying dark power surging, full of extremely cold killing intent. You made a mistake. The power of darkness never belongs to you. Even you are only using this power. Ancient One's eyes were calm, she opened her hands, and in an instant, there was something terrifying. A stream of magic came out, and this sudden blow knocked Dormammu's huge body back a bit on the spot. Dormammu roared, and in an instant, a large amount of dark power flowed quickly, repairing the scar on his face. Ancient One, Martin, you 2 humble humans. Dormammu roared and stretched out a finger. The entire dark dimension was in roar's response. In an instant, countless meteorites burning with dark green flames fell. Roar roared and smashed at Ancient One and Martin. Martin glanced at Ancient One coldly, and said indifferently, according to the agreement between you and me, after I kill Dormammu for you, you will give me Time Gem. Ancient One nodded. Yes, I will keep my promise, but don't forget, it was when you left the Earth. Handing over the Time Gem, she will lose a big weapon against Martin. Huh. When Dormammu is killed, the first thing I do is to leave the Earth. Everything is ready. Martin was talking with Ancient One, already talking about how to divide the victory after killing Dormammu. Dormammu was even more angry and roared, and the entire dark dimension began to agitate, turbulent, and all the deadly fixed stars and planets, at the moment, under the control of Dormammu's dark magic power, crashed into Ancient One and Martin. Martin threw a large space vortex. Ancient One raised his hand, sparks emerged. Large tracts of meteorites were cut and transferred on the spot. But there are still more meteorites entwined with terrible magic. Ancient One's brows were slightly wrinkled, and that peaceful face lacked any mood swings. In the next moment, I saw the same meteorite copied from her side, from the bottom up, with the meteorite thrown by Dormammu. Crash. Find flowers, boom boom boom. As if the galaxies collided and collapsed across the board. Martin shot, and a large wave of terrible energy burst out at this moment, and in the successive sweeps, it bombarded Dormammu like cleaning garbage. The fierce bombardment of countless meteorites and magic makes a terrifying sound, an apocalyptic scene. Every violent confrontation can cause terrible aftermath. Martin stepped out and exploded his power to the extreme. He shot one after another, combined with Ancient One, and constantly attacked Dormammu from multiple directions. This was the pinnacle of battle, purely from the destructive power, straight to the level single universe. The top cosmic god. Dormammu keeps urging the power of the dark world. The will of the Lord of Darkness spread, the dark dimension also changed, and the dust rolled, as if the magic power that could exterminate everything was shaking. But no matter how angry and murderous Dormammu was, facing Martin and Ancient One's cooperation, he gradually fell into a disadvantage. Originally facing Martin alone, it was already difficult to be sure of victory. Now there is another Ancient One who has entered the Dark Dimension. For a while, the Great Lord of Darkness became a little dangerous. Finally, in another terrible explosion, the entire Dark Dimension collapsed into more appalling cracks. Under the reckless bombardment of Martin and Ancient One, the recovery speed of the entire Dark Dimension has gradually been unable to keep up with the speed of destruction. You two, stop. What do you really want to do? The great Dormammu won't compromise easily. Dormammu felt a trace of panic in his heart, and said angrily. I said from the beginning, I don't need your compromises and concessions, because I was planning to kill you from the beginning. Martin sneered and shot one after another. Infinite Gem's power was brought to the fullest by him. With a sneer on his face, he went to bypass the terrible attack Dormammu and focused on destroying the Dark Dimension. Finally, the huge Dark Dimension, under Martin's attack regardless of loss, began to collapse. Space is an important foundation of a dimension, and the Space Gem in Martin's hands is the highest authority artifact on the space side of a universe, designed to destroy an independent dimension. Not difficult. The Dark Dimension began to collapse. This is not simply destroyed, but because of the Space Gem, the most basic framework built into the Dark Dimension has begun to collapse. The Dark Dimension is suppressed from the level in front of the Space Gem. Without the Dark Dimension, Dormammu's combat power would drop little by little. Damn thing, what did you do? Dormammu watched angrily as his world came to an end. This is his world, it is the root of his being strong and immortal. But it was ruined by these two damn humans in front of you. Ancient One said peacefully. We are killing you. Dormammu roared, enveloped in anger and anxiety, directly stretched out a hand and slammed it at Ancient One, but Ancient One instantly threw out a portal, and cut Dormammu's arm when it closed quickly. Dormammu let out a cry of pain. Martin's body moved like a ghost, Mind Gem lit up, and the light of the soul suddenly hit Dormammu's head, attacking Dormammu's spirit frantically. This time, it worked wonders. Dormammu's spirit was traumatized, and this time there was no full Dark Dimension to share with him. Successive injuries caused this ancient Mephisto to fall into a violent state. You are the third-generation god of the World Tree, almost in the same era as Odin and others. Now, the era of your old things is also over. You are high above, strong for too long, until your will and ambition are long. It's all rotten, so it's better to be killed by me altogether to make room for me. Martin tortured Dormammu frantically with Mind Gem, and said lightly. His voice was sincere, but it was precisely because of this that Dormammu felt more anger. The humiliated anger and the panic of seeing the signs of death, at the moment came to his heart together. Dormammu faintly felt that, I was afraid, that he was really going to the end. This kind of stranger came so suddenly. Not long ago, he was the great Lord of Darkness, enjoying the awe from the entire universe, but now is stepping into death, and these two guys in front of him will never do anything. Let him go. Dormammu was once again attacked by the two of them and was severely injured. That powerful dark power, at the moment, began to slowly disintegrate. Every time he confronted Martin and Ancient One, he would suffer more trauma and got weaker. Even if I die, it is just the beginning for you. Sooner or later you will follow in my footsteps. Dormammu's huge amounts of body slowly collapsed, and every moment, part of his body containing the power of endless darkness would dissipate. He is dying. Now I am the future you, Martin. I used to be as ambitious as you are, and I feel that the entire multi-universe will be open to me. But over time, some things will become you finally stand at a higher position, but you find desperately that your way forward has long been blocked. Dormammu roared and resisted as hard as he could, at the expense of the last power of darkness, burned his body, and fought Martin and Ancient One. Martin flickered, avoiding a black magic, and said lightly, things that have been blocked for you, but for me, it is smooth, a few stones, I just need to kick it away. No, you don't understand. You have never felt that kind of despair? Dormammu roared, his eyes red. Do my best to become stronger all the way, but when you find that there is already older in front of you, the gods are aloof and look down upon you with indifference. No matter how hard you work, they just look at you, and all your efforts will be wiped out. Why do I integrate the dark dimension? Because I don't do this, I will never have a way to move forward. Dormammu's voice was low, full of unwillingness and dead silence. Martin was silent for a moment. He knew what Dormammu meant. But there is no way. The Marvel system is like this. The mythical stories of ants becoming gods are being staged all the time. Some guys are simply lucky and easily surpass those who continue to practice hard. And the existence that has already become a god, aloft, everyone is ugly, and they are free to grab for a little profit, stubbornly abiding by the rules they set and think they are perfect, and require all latecomers to abide by them. The Marvel world is like this. The rise and fall are extremely sudden, and the boundary between the upper and lower is so cruel and cold. Even Ancient One didn't say anything at this time, just with a flat face, one after another shot, constantly weakening Dormammu. Perhaps you are right, Dormammu, but I am still fundamentally different from you. Even if I eventually become the next you, then I will definitely stand higher than you. Martin slowly raised his head, a calmness in his voice. Go to death with peace of mind, Dormammu. When I run rampant multi-universe, you will definitely not see it. You can't estimate my future. Martin made the final blow. In an instant, the entire dark dimension completely collapsed. The core time and space law was destroyed by Martin and Ancient One. Dormammu lost its greatest source of power. Boom boom boom. Martin rushed over, punched out, and punched Dormammu's huge body directly with one blow. Dormammu let out a stern wailing. It's over. The hundreds of years of struggle between you and me come to an end at this moment. Ancient One also spoke faintly, waving his hand slowly. The time gem on his chest bloomed, and green rays of light flickered one after another. Dormammu, who has lost the dark dimension, no longer has any strength to resist the passage of time. Martin's eyes flashed, and at the same time he took out the time-still gun, squeezed the trigger, and in the midst of the brilliance, he cut out the huge Dormammu in a sudden, and cut off contact with the surrounding time and space. Dormammu froze directly. His time was directly locked by Martin, stiff and motionless. The power of time. What is this? Ancient One looked surprised. Time stands still, the weapon I built. Martin was full of confidence, and made Ancient One's heart vibrate. Martin looked at Dormammu, who was frozen for a fixed amount of time and couldn't move, and said lightly, Die, Dormammu, I won't be the next you. Wow. The light flashed. Martin used all of his power, and even the authority of the leadership module for 10 seconds, his own strength once again ushered in a skyrocket. Within 10 seconds, the terrible attack that blasted out directly shook the entire universe. Dormammu was completely annihilated in this terrible attack.